wait. Sorry. Sorry, wait out.
My fellow Singaporeans, a very good afternoon to all of you. I thank you for waiting for that few minutes while we iron out some technical matters. I come to you today from the living room of the lovely home of Ricky in Towner Road, Jalan Besar GRC, which is one of the battleground constituencies for People's Voice. This is the first in our series of living room rallies. And over the next few weeks, we will be traversing Singapore to the other battleground constituencies that People's Voice will be contesting in. I know you may feel different that for the first time in our elective history, we are not going to have the crowds at mass rallies. But there's always a silver lining to every cloud. And I suppose the silver lining here is that all of you can watch from the comfort of your home and be protected from the elements of the weather, especially so at this moment when we are having the wet season. My fellow Singaporeans, I come today before you totally unscripted, and maybe you will find that a welcome change from the horrible 6 very scripted speeches that the PAP have put out over the last 2 weeks. I want to have a conversation with you. And you will know by now that in a very few short weeks or few short months, you will be headed for the polls. And this is going to be the most critical elections in 61 years of Singapore history. Yes, it has been 61 years since the PAP assumed government in 1959. And of course, I do remember that several years ago, a party across the border lost power and were kicked out after being in power for 61 years. But this election will present you with the clearest choice you have had since Singapore gained its independence. It is a choice between the PAP, the party of the privileged and the richest, and People's Voice, and the other opposition. People's Voice stands for the working class people of Singapore. We want to improve the lives for all. And it is our historic legacy to see that in this election, it is the working class people of Singapore who will prevail. Every 4 to 5 years, the PAP, the establishment, the media come before us with the same formula, with the same narrative. You must give us a strong mandate so that investors will have confidence. They will not leave Singapore. But every 4 to 5 years, for at least the last 2 decades, that life of the Singaporean has markedly decreased. It has not improved. This election is also about protecting the rights and interests of citizenship, which is what People's Voice stands for. My fellow Singaporeans, the 5 most important words that belongs to every Singaporean are we the citizens of Singapore. They are the opening words of our national pledge. Our national pledge does not open with the word I. It opens with the word we. Because citizenship is a political status. And when we use the word we, it means that we have a shared political status. We are together in this common enterprise known as Singapore. But over the decades, the PAP have diluted the meaning of citizenship And with it has come a host of problems, with jobs especially, which I intend to address today. We are in the midst of the greatest generational crisis in modern times. Coronavirus. We may lose up to 200,000 jobs. Yes. And the unemployment rate in Singapore today is at its highest for a decade. In the last quarter of 2019, 3/4 of the people who were retrenched were from the PMET category. But, my friends, today we have almost 400,000 foreigners working under employment passes and S passes. You know that an S pass holder earns between $2,400 to $3,899. Now, these are good paying jobs, but we have almost 200,000 foreigners doing S passes jobs. And the PAP is always coming to us telling us, oh, Singaporeans don't want those jobs, or there's a mismatch in skills. And they say the same thing about the employment passes, which are for people earning 3,900 and above. How can that be? Many Singaporeans, very well trained, very well qualified, very well experienced, who were previously in high-level positions, have today been reduced to taxi drivers, delivery men. Yes, I have come across many of them. And they have the audacity to tell us that Singaporeans do not want to do these jobs. You know, my friends, if we are going to lose another 200,000 jobs because of this crisis, Singaporeans deserve the chance to fill up the PMET jobs that are currently being done by foreigners. I do not believe that Singaporeans do not have the skill set to do them. I have lived in many countries. I have lived in England. I have lived in Indonesia. And let me tell you this. Indonesia is a huge archipelago of at least 276 million people. And yet, it has less than 100,000 foreign workers working in that huge country. Why? Because the Indonesian government insists on a transfer of technology, transfer of knowledge, transfer of skills. But you never get the PAP putting in any mechanisms insisting that the skills of foreigners who are currently working in our country are transferred to the local workforce. All they ever tell you is you have to reskill, you have to reskill, you have to upgrade. Yes, you can reskill and you can upgrade, and the jobs may never be there. That is the sad legacy of the labor policy of this PAP government. And you know, in the National Jobs Bank, they will not even tell you how many jobs go to Singaporeans and how many jobs go to foreigners. And they lump PRs and Singapore citizens under the category of locals. Where is the transparency? And I come back again to what I said at the outset. There must be a distinction between a Singapore citizen and a PR. But you will not get that from the PAP. They will happily tell you Singapore is for everyone. The foreign workers will be brought in to complement the local workforce. Really? I say no. I say Singapore is for Singaporeans. Yes, we will welcome people from all over the world into our country. We have always been that sort of nation, and we have always been that sort of people, ever since we were founded by Raffles 200 years ago. But it is wrong. It is wrong when you tell your own citizens that they have to compete with over 3 other billion people from Asia for jobs in their own country. It is wrong to tell that parent of a Singapore boy, of a Singapore young man who has served 2 years in the army, that when that young man comes out from university, he may have no job, or he may have a job that is not commensurate with his skill set or with his expectations. And I take this opportunity on Father's Day to also say this. A government who will not give the best opportunities to his own children, but will instead give those opportunities to alien children, is a bad father. How will you feel if your own blood father were to favor a child from outside the family? I am sure you will not feel good. But that is the position which many Singaporeans feel today. They feel they have been abandoned by their country. They feel that they are almost refugees in their own country. Yes, the PAP will come to us with all sorts of sophistry. They'll tell you we need foreign workers to complement the local workforce. Without them, our competitiveness will decline and your lives will be markedly worse off. Let me ask them this question. For the last 20 years, ever since we had this insane immigration policy and labor policy, have the lives of that ordinary Singapore worker become better or worse? Have the wages increased markedly or have they stagnated? And my friends, let's come to another topic, that of a living wage. They proudly proclaim that we are a first world nation. They say that Lee Kuan Yew brought us from the third world to the first world. Yes, we are also a first world nation without a living wage. But they want to pay themselves, or they demand the highest political wages in the world. And not only that, they frequently tell us that they are not paid enough. What I find so shocking at the end of the day is you have this almost total disregard for that Singapore citizen and his forebears who have spent decades building up our nation. Behind closed doors, they slam us. They slam those who do not earn 500,000 and above as mediocres. And they slam those who buy in bulk because of the COVID crisis as disgraceful or xia sui, not knowing that they themselves have become the laughing stock of the world. and as the leading Australian communicable disease expert Mike Tu said, Singapore has become one of the greatest failures for the coronavirus. And I think the coronavirus epidemic has shown up the PAP for what it is. A mediocre group who, despite all the rhetoric and the spin and the PR they put out, are weak men and women, totally devoid of ideas of how to bring our nation forward. Heng Swee Keat, who wants to be the next Prime Minister, has presided over the worst productivity record as Finance Minister. And they tell us that without the foreign workers, we cannot be competitive. In fact, it is because of the foreign workers that we are in such a bad shape today, because of low productivity, low wages. So, my friends, if you believe that the PAP has instilled in you pride for your country and optimism for your future, yes, you should go on voting for the PAP in this coming election. But if you believe that you no longer feel so proud of your country, and that the future for yourself and your next generation are bleak because of the policies of the PAP government for the last 2 decades, may I suggest that you have a different choice. You can pursue a different course. And you can choose a different government come election day. For the people's voice, we will always insist on putting people first, because we believe that only by doing that can we make Singapore our home again. And we must regain our dignity, our country, and our future. I hope if you have any questions, you can answer me, you can ask me questions, and I will certainly answer you live. Thank you very much.
Currently, no question.
Yeah? Am I off?
Ask me.
May I ask for questions from the viewers?
Will you revamp education system by Titus?
Titus, thank you for that great question about the education system. You know, I will start by saying this. The PAP always tells us there is a mismatch in skills and jobs. And they say, as a result, we have no choice but to bring in the foreigners. Does that not show you how bad, in fact, the education system has become? If we cannot educate our people to do the jobs that are available in the market, you have to seriously ask yourselves, ask the PAP, ask Ong Ye Kung, what is he doing with the education system? Yes, I think we need to revamp our education system. The education system that I went through, and probably someone of similar age went through, they were invented for the industrial age. But times have changed. We are now in the knowledge era. And so I think we must definitely have an education system that promotes more critical thinking, not rote learning, not so obsessive with grades. And I very much like what the Finnish are doing with their education system. The PAP always talk about revamping the education system. But look at how slow they are. They cannot even do away with PSLE. And you know, a few months ago, at the end of last year, after PV made a lot of noise, or was it earlier this year, when we questioned why, in the midst of COVID, our home-based learning was so backward. Ong Ye Kung said, oh yes, by 2024 or 27, I can't remember which year it was, every secondary school student will then have a laptop, a learning device. And the other day, I learned from Taman that now they will bring it forward to next year. You mean in 2020, Singapore being a first world nation is not able to equip its students with learning devices for home-based learning? And you know, that also shows the power of social media. That shows the power of politicians like myself, who's daring enough to voice out. And when we collectively make our voices heard, changes happen. That has not happened in the past, when the mainstream media was dominant. But times are changing. And I will ask you to keep asking questions and keep making demands, because that's how change comes about. Thank you, and I hope I've answered you, Titus.
Okay, a question from To Hong Lee. Where is your party contesting?
Hong Lee, we have made known our choice of 6 constituencies. In fact, we have added a 7th, Jurong GRC. We are presently in talks with some other parties whom we are friendly with. Let me say this. For 6 constituencies, we will need 20 candidates. PV now has almost 30 candidates. So we have more than enough candidates to fight all the 6 constituencies we want to. But in the spirit of opposition unity, we are prepared to discuss with our fellow opposition members, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that come polling day, the opposition are going to have a resounding success. Remember, this is the 61st year, and amazing things happen in the 61st year.
There's one from Gad. Many senior colleagues feel that there is no strong opposition party. WP may be one with a few track record. Will there be a chance for a coalition considered?
Gad, let me say this. People must move away from a notion that there can only be a 2-party system. That is not realistic in the modern world. Let me give you a few examples. Some of the most advanced countries in the world, Germany, the Scandinavian countries, Switzerland, they do not have a 2-party system. They have multi-party systems in parliament, and that works fine. People will always give you the theory, the argument, oh, you can't have so many small parties because it will be unstable. That is total nonsense. That is total nonsense. A multi-party system forces the parties to work together, to come up with the best solutions. You look at our parliament now. Yeah, there are two parties in parliament. Has the ruling party been up to the task for COVID? In fact, it has been a shameful spectacle, a shameful failure on their part. You look at the UK, which started off as a traditional two-party system. But do they have two parties today? No, they don't. They have at least four parties. You have the ruling Conservative, you have the main Labour Party, you have the Liberal Democrats, you have the Scottish National Party, which is a major bloc is in Westminster. And let's even go now to America, all right, which I think today is one of the very, very few democracies with still a two-party system. But I don't expect that to last because President Trump is not really from the mainstream Republican Party. And over the years, the Republican Party has had factions that have broken off. They have this faction known as the Tea Party. All right? So it is likely in the next few years, you are going to see a multi-party system evolve in America as well. Yes, the opposition may consist of small parties, some bigger parties like the WP, but there's absolutely the chance for us to work together. If not now, certainly in Parliament. And that is how all multi-party systems work. They force parties to work together in Parliament.
Probably last question.
Last question? Anyone?
If not, then just close. I think not.
Thank you very much. Thank you, my fellow Singaporeans. It has been a great pleasure and experience for me to do this first living room rally. And I hope to see all of you again very soon in another location. I want to thank Ricky, our host today, for the wonderful hospitality. Thank you all very much.
Okay, sorry, last question. Would you host this rally often?
My friends, we are going to be holding such living room rallies from now until cooling off day. And that is an undertaking I give you. We are not only going to hold living room rallies, we are going to have dining room debates as well. And that is another first from People's Voice. Thank you very much.